Your SKAARHOJ controller is configurable in the most awesome ways you can imagine, but it pays off to keep track of the different benefits and drawbacks of configuration methods. So we have here an XC3. It's connected to a network, and it has USB connection to a computer, and then of course power. So we see it's connected to this computer to the SKAARHOJ firmware updater app that recognizes the controller. We see that from this window. And the way we will now configure it is by pressing the Open Configuration link. So it reads a device ID from your controller by pressing that link, opens a web page, the one you see here, and now we can start configuring the controller. After completing this, we will save the settings and we'll go back to the firmware update application and press check for updates. So it will ask back to the server, did anything new happen? It will make a new firmware and download it and install it on your XC3 controller. Let's talk about the advantages. Well, the first and absolutely awesome advantage is you can add new device cores. So currently we have a Blackmagic ATEM switcher installed. If we press this button, we get access to a list of device cores, so we can install support for even more hardware, like an AGA Kumo router, or let's take Blackmagic Smart Scopes, Bright Eye NXT 450 from Ensemble Designs, maybe a robotic camera. You save these settings, and now you can go back to the controller configuration page, and you can use these new device cores in your configuration of the controller. So just to give you an example, we see in the list of actions that we do not only have ATEM actions anymore, we also have AGA Kumo actions, we have actions for Blackmagic Smart Scope, Ensemble Design, Panasonic, and so forth, in addition to all the system actions. So that's one advantage. We can install support for new hardware. We can also add modules. So since we now are dealing with a modular controller, and XC3 being the master, we can add support for other modules. So let's add a section with buttons. Let's add a replay controller. Let's add a camera module and save this configuration. We go back to controller configuration, and now we see the master module here, but we also installed the support for these modules, and we can now click on the hardware interface component of those, and we can select actions for them. In addition to this, and now let's look at the controllers we selected. Take this one, for example. The replay controller has buttons that would take a label under the cap. So I click this button. It's currently named M1. All right. So I maybe want to tell this or give this the name play, stop, and pause as an example. Okay. So I save settings, and we'll see that these names are now used on the replay controller. We can also name any other component. We have some names like jog, T-bar, top button, which is a joystick, and some other buttons are just named X whatever. So changing these labels will mainly affect the web interface. What you see here, what you see in the local web interface of the controller. But in the case of the KP01 buttons, you will also be able to find a sheet of labels, a PDF file that you can print and cut out the labels from the transparency you've printed and put under the button caps on the XC8 replay controller. Another definite advantage of using the online configuration is that you can manage media. So media means that you can add strings that could become labels for all the nice displays your SKAARHOJ controller will probably have. So that could be a string that defines a header and a text for one of the displays. You can also add images. So if you click here and select an image, you will be able to upload graphics, 64 by 32 pixels, and those can be included as labels for the buttons, the displays that are above the buttons on many of these controllers. So to summarize the online configuration, the main advantages is you can add device cores, you can manage modules, you can also change the text of labels and have them printed or downloaded as a PDF file you can print, and you can manage media like uploading graphics and adding text strings used for labels in the displays. The downside to going online is the process involves checking for updates. So you need to go back to the firmware update application, check for updates, and wait for the firmware to be generated on the server. So now the firmware is downloaded to the controller, and we'll take a look at local configuration. So instead of going online to core.skaarhoj.com, let's just close this browser down. We will open the serial monitor and press the config button to bring the controller into configuration mode. You need to notice the IP address of the controller at this point. We are going to use that. So the IP address is here, and in configuration mode, we can access a local web interface and do the configuration there. So we open a web browser again, go to the IP address of the controller, and it loads up like this. So in this interface, you see basically the same things. All the hardware interface components can be configured as you like. And if we go to the bottom, you see also IP settings, and we can enable, disable devices. Let's try to enable a device and give it an IP address. We can also edit states. We can save the whole thing, and notice at the moment no memory is used internally. So I press save, the page reloads, and at the bottom you see now we have used 31% of the memory inside for storing this configuration. One of the advantages of doing this is we can store presets. And what if I select new and name a preset 2? And well, I could also change something. So let's change the IP address of the devices I'm connecting to. So 1, 2, 3. And 3, 2. I could also add an action. Let's do that in the top. This one will be easy to identify. So for hardware interface component number 1, we add an action in the state called ME2. And then we scroll to the bottom again, and we press the Save To button. So we're now saving this state to preset number 2. Let's take a look at the settings. So the IP address was changed to this, and in the top we should see actions set for ME2. So if we go to the bottom, we'll see we can change to preset number 1 and press the load button. So loading preset number 1 should now bring us back into a case where we do not have any actions for ME2 state on the first hardware interface component, and we also see the IP addresses are different, like they were supposed to be in preset number 1. This capability of presets is local to the controller. It's not something you can do offline or online on core.skaarhoj.com. It's entirely available in the local interface. Also, what you should know is the clear presets function will wipe out any presets and configurations saved to the local memory. However, clear presets might be necessary to press if you updated firmwares from core.skaarhoj.com, because those firmwares might be incompatible with the memory structure that is currently in the controller.